This is the Roots and All podcast, and I'm your host, Sarah Wilson. Join me as I talk about all aspects of gardening with some of the top horticulturists from around the world. Hello, and welcome to this episode of the podcast, which is the last one before Valentine's Day. Of course, you may be thinking about buying some flowers to give on Sunday, so I thought, what better person to interview than a British flower grower? So I'm talking to Ben Cross of Crosslands Flower Nursery, a family-owned and run nursery specialising in cut Alstroemerias. Ben is an expert grower, public speaker, an ambassador for British Flowers, and founder of the British Flowers Rock campaign. As you'll find out, growing flowers isn't all roses, but Ben loves what he does, and he starts by giving some background on the nursery and his involvement.
Yeah, well, I'm fourth generation, with my great-grandparents starting out on the Land Settlement Association. So some of the listeners may have heard of the LSA, but I'm sure all the listeners have heard of the Great Depression of the 30s. A lot of shipbuilders, a lot of miners out of work. And basically the government set up a scheme where over 20 areas around the country, sort of unemployed families would go and work and farm the land. And my great-grandparents, Albert and Louisa, were original. So one of the original families that sort of put up their hands, signed on the dotted line, and off they went from Abertyle area down here to Chichester on the south coast, and a place called Sidlesham, and that was the largest one of these LSAs, the land settlements. And then my granddad joined them after World War II. He met my nan, who was a Pompey girl down the road here, had my dad, uncles and aunties at Sidlesham on the LSA. And then basically when you were part of this government scheme, they would sell your produce through the scheme and take some of the money, basically. So they'd, I don't know, go, Mr. Cross, I've sold you cabbages for that much, your courgettes for this much, and here's your percentage. You know, they'd take a cut of your earnings. And I guess back then it was seen as a bit like a Kickstarter is seen as now. So my granddad got on with it really well, and he was able to set up his own nursery, basically. So we moved from Sidlesham to Warburton, which is near Arundel. And if you don't know where Arundel is, it's near Chichester, which is basically 20 minutes west of Brighton, sort of in between Brighton and Portsmouth. And he bought what was then part of Barnum Nurseries, and he bought the bit of land where they used to grow their Christmas trees. So the first sort of product we sold from Crosslands were Christmas trees. We had to make way for, back then, obviously wooden greenhouses, and we moved here where I live today in 1957. So we've been going since 1936, and we've been here in Warburton since 1957. So that's sort of a brief history of the LSA, and it's a whole nother talk, but it's sort of been interesting for me as the fourth generation of the nursery to sort of, you know, delve back into the history of the 30s and the Land Settlement Association. And there was a whole exhibition about it at the Wilden Downland Museum, which is near me, quite a big museum, sort of a living museum. And sort of my nan was interviewed and videoed, and my dad, and to go back through old photos and to learn about where we've come from, where our roots, you know, originate from, has been really interesting. You know, as a younger grower, to have sort of the heritage and history behind us is really cool. So it's been, you know, it's been sort of an interesting story to find out about. So, and then obviously your next question is going to be about why we specialise in Alstroemeria, isn't it?
It is,
so
yes.
It's quite nicely on to basically when Grandad bought the land where the nursery is at the moment. It was very much a continuation of what we were doing on the LSA, which is growing a real diverse range of crops, from flowers and salad crops. And then we also had, obviously, sheep, chickens, cattle. It was, you know, just everything. But then the birth of the supermarkets in the 50s, 60s, 70s, you know, people got used to having things all year round, you know, strawberries and blueberries for Christmas and things way out of season. And no longer could you grow lots of different things and make a living, basically. So it was time for him to specialise. And it was also the time of rising oil prices. So oil was about 8p a litre. Now it's about 80 odd p a litre. And Alstroemeria, it's known as a cool crop. So basically it looks cool in your arrangements and in your vases, but obviously by a cool crop, it doesn't need as much heat input to harvest the crop. And obviously it's an all year round crop as well. So back then we could supply the supermarkets, the wholesalers, all year round, a plethora, a smorgasbord of different colours and varieties. And it was a good alternative crop. And slowly but surely the whole nursery came over to Alstroemeria. And it sort of finished sort of becoming, a bit of this and a bit of that. And it came over to all Alstroemeria in the 70s, really. So we've been doing Alstroemeria, British Alstroemeria, since the 70s, sort of specialising in it. Yeah.
Mm. And do you produce anything else now at the nursery?
No, so we do over 50 varieties now, which is like growing 50 different varieties. If your listeners ever can imagine coming here to Crosslands, we've obviously got big greenhouses and hundreds of beds, and the beds are about 1 metre wide and 30 metres long, and we've got hundreds of beds, over 50 different varieties. And even if you walk through the greenhouse today, every variety is different heights, different thicknesses of growth, where some have thinned out and some are coming back into flowering. Some like the winter, some like the summer. They behave completely differently to one another. So it is like growing over 50 different types of plants, because all the varieties behave completely differently. So it's not as easy as planting lots of different colours and they all grow the same. If it was that easy, it wouldn't be that enjoyable. It's quite nice to learn about new varieties and grow different types and things like that. So yeah, we specialise in it, and we do over millions of stems. And we do millions of stems over the course of the year, with spring and autumn being when we're in season. So we're doing thousands of bunches a day in spring and autumn, because that's when they're in season. The soil temperature, the air temperature, the light levels, everything is just sort of on its side. So it's when it's in its pomp and at its best. And then obviously in the summer, the soil temperature gets too hot. So the soil temperature gets up to about 30 odd degrees. The air temperature is about 40 odd degrees. So the roots in the soil, they want to do what we want to do, go to the beach and have an ice cream. They want to chill out, and they basically go into a period of dormancy where we harvest more than they can produce. So production sort of tails off in the summer. We're still picking and harvesting, but not as much in the summer. And then now in the winter, obviously, we don't have any artificial lighting. So the good thing is we don't cause any light pollution, but with the poor light levels through the winter, we don't get as much production either, really. But there's not really a demand for flowers between Christmas and Valentine's anyway. So again, it's a really good crop to grow, because it kind of goes to sleep when it's not really wanted, which is handy. So yeah, so spring and autumn, that's sort of when we're in season, even though we produce all year round.
Yeah, I heard it may be an urban legend, but you, I think, are quite near to Selsey. And I remember someone telling me that Patrick Moore had moved down there because the skies were so good down there. So I imagine you probably wouldn't be flavour of the month if you started lighting up all your greenhouses, if that story is true.
He does live here, because we've got in Chichester, in China, near us, we've got a museum here, and I actually saw him there. But yeah, I think he does. He is around here, and yeah, we've obviously got the best light levels, the best soil, and we're obviously between the South Downs National Park and the ocean, the Channel. So it's warmer here in the winter, and it's cooler here in the summer, because we get the nice sea breeze. So we're literally 5 minutes north of us is the Downs, and 5 minutes south of us is the beach. So it's sort of perfect growing weather, and the Downs, a lot of that sort of westerly weather that comes from the west, the Downs sort of buffers that and takes it north of us. So we're very lucky. We've got a lovely little microclimate, which is perfect for growing down here. Hence, that's why the largest LSA, the largest land settlement, the government put down here, because it's the best place for growing. But unfortunately, there's not many. Well, there's no other flower growers left here at all, really, of any of a large scale. But there is tomato nursery and a salad pepper nursery, and they're, I don't know, 40, 50 acres each, and they do have artificial lighting. But as I say, we grow the crop very naturally, apart from putting a little bit of heat into the greenhouses, which is through biomass, so it's all sustainable. We've got good wood and Slindon estates around where we are. A lot of wood needs to be managed, a lot of trees need to be managed, so all of that wood gets made into pellets, and we burn that managed wood. But remember, I say it's a cool crop anyway, so it only needs 13 degrees in the greenhouses at night time. So if we were growing tomatoes or other types of flowers, you'd need 20 degrees in there at night in the winter, but Alstroemeria, it's a very sustainable crop, so we don't use a lot of heat anyway. So apart from that, we grow it very naturally.
Yeah, when we originally spoke, I was impressed by, how organic and sustainable the business is. Are there any other things that you do to that end?
Yeah, I mean, we're not obviously totally organic, because we need to use nutrients in the soil and things like that to make a good crop. You obviously need good levels of calcium for vase life. You need good levels of nitrogen for obviously leaf stem growth, and good levels of potassium, potash for flowering, for nice big fat juicy vibrant buds. So we're not completely organic, but so we've got sustainable heating, and Alstroemeria, British Alstroemeria, is also known as a dry crop. So we're not draining the River Arun or draining lakes around us like they are in obviously other countries where water usage is more problematic. We only water 20 minutes once a month in the winter, and 20 minutes once every 10 days in the summer. So it's a cool crop and it's a dry crop. And also we only replant about less than 5% of the crop a year. So we've got hundreds and hundreds of beds of roots and plants, but we only replant 7 or 8 beds a year. So a lot of our beds are over 20, 30 years old, still producing good saleable stems, to this day. So it's if we were growing a different type of flower or salad crops or other things in the greenhouse, we'd be gutting out all the greenhouse, getting all the plant material out, sterilizing the soil, ready for the new plants to come back in. But as I say, we only replant less than 5% of the crop a year, so it's very, very sustainable.
And who do you supply to you? And are there kind of issues around packaging? Do you need to be careful about what you send out? Are you mindful of that as well?
Yeah, well, the first question first, who we supply. I mean, in sort of Grandad's time and Dad's early days, we used to obviously supply wholesalers like Brighton, Southampton, Portsmouth, Covent Garden, and we even used to send up to Manchester, Birmingham, Sheffield, the Midland markets, as well as supplying all the supermarkets. But one by one, the supermarkets went for the foreign cheaper stuff, and so did the wholesalers. So it sort of changed over the years. We used to say supply all of the supermarkets, and literally Valentine's Day this year, Sainsbury's phoned me up and said, "Oh, Ben, we don't want your flowers anymore because we can get them 4p cheaper a bunch from Colombia," So they were the last one to go, but luckily Morrison's have come in and they've been far more ethical, getting behind the British Flowers Rock campaign and the British flowers and more sustainable flowers. So we've been dealing with Morrison's, so we supply them, and they've been great so far. And say going back to wholesalers, I mean, we don't even send to Covent Garden anymore, which is only an hour and a bit north of us. Grandad used to get £1.95 a bunch, and we used to send hundreds of boxes a week to Covent Garden. But even if I sent a handful of boxes now, we'd get 50p a bunch. It's just not worth it. So we've had to diversify, and we supply florists that work out of their home studios, farm shops, restaurants and cafes. We supply the public, direct to the public. So we've obviously, to survive, had to supply, change who we supply. And we've just found people that care about the planet and the carbon footprint and care about where their produce comes from. And that's the way we've sort of gone with it, really. So, and talking about sort of packaging, the really good thing is that we still have a lot of local people, local florists and restaurants, cafes that come into us for the flowers, and they just collect the flowers. So they're package free, because even if I wrap my flowers in paper, papers still come from trees, right? So the best way to buy anything, if it's flowers or fruit or anything, is obviously package free. So people locally, they come and literally just collect the stems of flowers, and then when we have to send them nationwide, they go into recyclable sleeves. And obviously a lot of flowers that go around the world are in hydro packs, so they're in plastics with water, and obviously they add a lot of chemicals and use chemicals to clean those plastic packagings and things like that, but we don't do any of that. Ours just are very happy in a cardboard box which can be recycled or reused. So they're quite sort of low maintenance, for transporting. So and as I say, the big difference as well is that a lot of Alstroemeria that comes into our country, yes, they've got the packaging around the bunch, but each individual bud, primary bud, those sort of 6-pack beer cans, the plastic packaging. Imagine a miniature version of that. So you've got this plastic netting, and that is wrapped around each individual primary bud of that bunch as well. And then you've got your cable ties and your other bits that go with it. I mean, the amount of packaging used within the flower industry has got to be more than the food industry. You think of all those delicate flowers and all of the cable ties and plastics and the sellotapes and things like that that are used to keep flowers, looking okay. It's amazing, the amount of packaging used in just one box of flowers that's coming from Ecuador, Ethiopia, Colombia, Kenya. It's incredible.
Yeah, it's interesting you say about Covent Garden, actually, because I have been up there for various work reasons, and I know that they did a big campaign around British flowers. And when you go up there now, a lot of florists who shop there will tell you that there's a big push for British flowers, and the wholesalers up there are trying to source more British flowers. So it's interesting that you say, actually, it might not be that they don't want to use British flowers or don't want to use you, but actually from your point of view,
they can mark up on the foreign stuff, can't they? The wholesalers, they buy in and sell. That's their job, and if they can buy something, at a good price and sell it for high, they make a bigger margin. It's the way the world goes. Yeah, but we still supply Brighton market because I do the British Flowers Rock campaign quite heavily locally. For example, we used to just supply 5 boxes to them. Now we supply over 20 boxes a week to that market because of the education, the awareness. And, it's not all to do with price. It's also to do with the planet carbon footprint. They're going to produce a bigger flower. They're going to produce a more vibrant flower, and they're going to last longer. So it's, buying cheapest isn't always the best, as we all know, with cars and computers and other things. It's quality as well, isn't it, and consistency. So, Brighton's going quite well down here, yeah.
Good. And what is the British Flowers Rock campaign, and what caused you to start it?
Well, I actually did marine biology for over 10 years, so I sort of lived around the world doing that. And as a kid, obviously growing up on the nursery, and where we are here is, in the country, so I always wanted to sort of be involved with the environment and help the planet as best as I could, even from a kid, So I went off and did that, and then I came back because I sort of got fed up of, finding a rare bird, but they'd still build a wind farm, or finding a rare bit of coral, but they'd still dig for oil, or, you were a tiny person in a big cog, if you like. And I obviously came back to the nursery during my holidays and Christmases and Mother's Day to help out and things like that. And I just got fed up of seeing lots of nurseries like us being smashed down to build red brick houses on. And, so it's sort of in my blood, and it clicked. And I did marine biology from 2000 to 2011. And I came back here in 2011. And I got in touch with the NFU, with DEFRA, had local MPs come out to really, sort this problem out. And from 2011 to 2014, I sort of went down that route of trying to get people to help us and make a difference, but it just wasn't happening. No one could be bothered really. But I was. So I basically thought, well, I'll just do it myself then if no one's going to do it. And in 2014, I came up with the British Flowers Rock campaign, which is all about talking to people like you and the public and people that may not know what's going on with the UK flower industry. And, just if someone can just click on another extra 1, 5, 10% in their brain when they go and buy flowers, then we've done our job. So it's all about education, awareness, product placement in shops and labelling in shops. For example, we are 20, 30 years behind where food is now. So to give you an example, British bacon can no longer be called British bacon if it was Danish bacon but packed in Britain. We've got the red traffic light system on our cereal boxes. When you walk up to the fish counter, you should be buying whole fish and you're looking for your sustainable fish logo. When you walk up to the egg counter, we don't even have any sort of battery hen eggs. It's either barn or free range. But with flowers, you walk into a supermarket, you've got a big cascade of flowers in front of you. For example, the Sainsbury in Chichester says, we support 100% British flowers. Oh, do you? That says Israel, Iran, Egypt, Colombia, Holland. It's mixed messaging, and the whole purpose is we should have a flower stand and another British seasonal flower stand, and better labelling, better product placement would be a start. So you'll have a Christmas bouquet. It'll be Christmas bouquet, 10 quid. And that's all that you as a consumer will be told. You won't be told what chemicals are on the packaging, what chemicals are on the flowers, not its carbon footprint, when it was picked, where it was harvested, where it was packaged. You've got no information apart from what's in the, what flowers it is and how much it is. And it's just not good enough. It's not good enough education or awareness for the public to make an informative choice, really, is it? So,
no. So you're campaigning to, raise awareness, as you say, and to kind of, get better regulations around labelling, I suppose.
Exactly. That's one thing. I mean, that would be a start. And, if it's from Kenya, say it's from Kenya in big, bold writing so people, know where it's come from. I remember my first British Flowers Rock gig I did in 2014. It was a gardening group with over 100 people. And when I said over 90% of flowers are imported, you should have seen their faces. They were gasping. They were like, no, this can't be right. I was like, yep. And that's a gardening club. And so imagine just the general public. Every time I do about 50, 60 talks a year. I've been doing a lot, obviously, over Zoom within the greenhouses over the last 10 months. But, there's always that reaction where people just can't fathom it. They just can't get to grips with it. And it just takes that bit of awareness and education to make people sort of think. And if it makes them think a little bit, well, then, I've done my sort of bit,
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
So how will it affect you post-Brexit, or how will it affect British flower growers? How will it affect kind of imports, consumers? What is it going to be better, do you think, for British flower growers? I really
don't know, because as I've said, a lot of our flowers come from outside the EU. They come from places like, say, Colombia, South Africa, Kenya, Ethiopia, Ecuador. So I really don't know how it's going to go, really. And obviously a lot of stuff comes over in shipping containers as well. So when we used to deal with some of the supermarkets, they wanted a 5-week forecast. So basically it takes about 5 weeks from a flower in Ecuador to then go onto a shipping container, get frozen to about 0.5 degree, pumped full of chemicals to keep it looking fresh. Then it goes around the world in a shipping container, and obviously a lot gets flown as well. And obviously a lot of these boats and planes are going back to wherever they came from empty as well. So half the carbon footprint is just stuff going back empty as well, because we don't produce anything that anyone wants anymore. So it's there's that to think about as well. So I don't know how it's going to go, because obviously in Holland, you'd think, oh, there'll be loads of Alstroemeria growers just in Holland. But there's only 12. And there used to be a lot more, because even the Dutch are finding it hard with the cheap imports coming in and out of Holland. They find it hard. And California used to be a really big flower hub there, but they're feeling the effects of the cheap Colombian stuff as well. So it's not just the UK; it's other places that are being affected with, obviously, the cheaper flowers from around the world as well. So I'm not sure how Brexit's going to go, but I'm sure if people want cheap cars, cheap clothes, cheap flowers, they can get it. And if they don't, if they want to think, a bit more, then they can buy more sustainably and locally. It's the same with everything, isn't it? Clothes and food and other bits. So flowers are no different. And at the end of the day, if it all comes down to money, well, that's not the point of the British Flowers Rock thing. It's all about the planet. It doesn't matter if it's cheaper, more expensive, or whatever. The most important thing is that they're better for the environment and saving our heritage, like our big family businesses and things like that. So, because even I'm a 4th generation young grower, I've got, I didn't go to horticultural college or anything, but I've grown up here. I've got lessons from my great granddad, my granddad, my dad, my uncles, my aunties, my mum. They've all taught me how to grow the Alstroemeria firsthand, and you can't go to college and learn that, or university and learn that. And we're losing a lot of family businesses like that, and you just lose so much information and sort of raw other talented growers. You just lose it, because it will just be a standard format of learning, whereas I've learned organically, you could put it.
And how many, if say I wanted to go and buy, I don't know, say I want to buy a mixed bunch of flowers and I want them to be completely grown in the UK, what would be my options as a consumer?
So we do supply the public. So we supply sort of skinny boxes. That's just £20 for. I hate to plug it, but for £20 you get 4 big bunches of British Alstroemeria delivered to your door. So we do supply the public, and obviously try and support your local florist instead of a supermarket. And if you do have a local florist or a local farm shop or veggie shop, go into those places and say, oh, we heard Ben on Roots and All podcast. Here's his Instagram at Alstroemeria Ben. Go and, buy flowers from him instead of other places, or check out Flowers from the Farm website and, see if there's a local grower to where you are. And then if you've only got a supermarket, it becomes very difficult, but sometimes they are labelled with the Union Jack flag. So, for example, British tulips will be in season, and then obviously we'll have the British daffodils, and then we'll have the Sweet Williams, the gladioli, and then the sunflowers. So you do get British flowers in the supermarkets, but it's quite challenging and hard to pin them down because of the poor labelling and product placement. But you generally, as I say, get your tulips, and then your daffodils and Sweet Williams and things like that through the summer. So there are still British flowers in the supermarkets. But remember that if you're shopping at a supermarket and buying British flowers, you're not buying them at the correct price.
Yes.
To give you some idea, the supermarkets, we used to get about 20 odd p a stem from the supermarkets in the 80s and 90s, and they even used to give us a bit more a stem in the winter to pay for their fuel costs. But now supermarkets want them from about 10p a stem. From 20 odd p in the 80s to 10p in 2021, it's you can see it's unsustainable. So let's say if people listening can go to the grower direct, is great. If they can't, then please support your local farm shop or vet or florist. And then if you can't do that and you've only got a supermarket, then really try and look out for the labelling, which is hard. But as I say, a lot of growers like me, we use couriers to deliver them to people's houses anyway. So it's there's loads of options to buy British now, which is really good. I think a lot of growers like me have sort of gone with the times, on social media and things like that. So it's slowly getting out there, I think, a bit more to the public, which is good.
Yeah. And would you recommend it? Would you recommend it as a career or a business venture for someone?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think of myself as a business person at all. I mean, it's a lifestyle. I always say it's like farming, just with flowers. So, for example, in the summer, you think, oh yeah, you can just chill out and just grow. Well, no, because you've got the irrigation to look after. And then in the winter, you think, oh, surely they just go dormant, the poor light. Well, no, I've got the biomass boilers to, if they break at night and things like that, it's a freezing night. So it's, we live on site where we work, and it's just like farming, but with flowers. So it's very much, I would say, a lifestyle rather than a business, if that makes sense from where I'm coming from. So I do it because I'm passionate about it and I love it, and I believe in right and wrong and what's good for the planet and what's not good for the planet, if you know what I mean. So yeah, but as I say, if you're into that kind of stuff like I am, it's a great career. And talking about that, we do apprenticeship schemes with horticultural colleges. So we work with like Brinsbury, Sparshot, Plumpton colleges, and we do work placements for students, and a lot of those students now have worked for us and still work for us, and it's really good on their CVs and to get really good experience, So yeah, I love working with the students. I sort of go into the colleges, do the British Flowers Rock Talk, and then all of the students come out for like a tour, or over lockdown they've been having the Zoom tour, and then we offer the work placements as well, 1 or 2 work placements a year. So we've built up those relationships with those colleges sort of the last sort of 5-6 years since 2014. So it's good that the colleges are getting on board with it as well,
It's great that Crosslands are working with colleges to foster the next generation of growers. Thank you to Ben for taking time out to speak about the nursery and about the British Flowers Rock campaign. I know we didn't touch on the cultivation aspect of Alstroemerias much, but that would have been a whole other episode, so perhaps another time. When I first spoke to Ben, I was really bowled over by his enthusiasm for British flowers and his love for his nursery and its history. As I listened back to the interview to edit it, it struck me when he spoke about how year on year he gets squeezed on price. I know I've said it before, but how and where we spend our money affects growers like Ben. And we need to vote with our wallets for the sort of future that we want. Fighting what we don't want by withdrawing our money from it is, I believe, the most powerful form of protest that we have. If you want to support Ben and the nursery, he's very active online. He's at Alstroemeria Ben on Twitter and Instagram, and look up Crosslands Nursery on Facebook. You'll find pictures of the nursery, Ben's instructional videos. You can ask him any questions and buy some flowers. Thank you as always for listening. Here's Dr. Ian Bedford talking about tobacco whitefly.
Precisely 30 years ago, the vast winter vegetable crops of California became headline news around the globe, since they'd rapidly succumbed to phenomenal infestations of tobacco whitefly, a sap-sucking insect that was assumed to be just a relatively minor pest within tropical and subtropical countries around the world. However, this 1 millimetre long, sap-sucking bug was so numerous in California that many trillions of them formed dense swirling fogs as they moved amongst the crops. This unprecedented event resulted in a catastrophic yield loss of around $500 million, but also presented a mystery as to why a previously insignificant insect should suddenly have become such an extraordinary crop pest. So entomologists throughout the world, including myself, were asked to investigate. We began by setting up international science networks, which then enabled the Californian whitefly to be studied and compared to tobacco whitefly populations from many other countries. And as the research was collated, it became clear that the Californian whitefly was very different to the others. It produced more eggs, transmitted many plant viruses, and most worryingly, was resistant to insecticides and highly prolificous. It was in fact a new superbug, a type of the tobacco whitefly that had rapidly evolved to survive the chemicals that were being extensively used within crop protection. As the research continued, diagnostic tests were developed that easily distinguished the superbug from other tobacco whitefly populations and enabled it to be tracked across the world, which soon revealed that the superbug had already spread to all continents and that it was linked to the global trade in ornamental plants, dispersing out from infested importations onto field and horticultural crops. Discovering this was a breakthrough, since it enabled the whitefly's migration routes to be intercepted. Then, by using integrated crop protection strategies instead of repetitive chemical treatments, the whitefly's insecticide resistance levels were reduced, and so its control within crops throughout the world became more manageable. Despite this, though, the superbug strain of the tobacco whitefly remains a serious plant pest and transmitter of crop viruses within warmer regions of the world, which includes southern Europe. And even here in the UK, it remains high on the national list of notifiable pests, and is one of the reasons why ornamental plants, such as imported poinsettias, continue to be checked at our borders.
You can download or listen to the podcast direct from the website rootsandall.co.uk. Please also check out my Patreon, where you can make a one-off donation or take out a monthly subscription to help support the podcast. Because if you enjoy the show, please help it continue. I also have a GoFundMe where you can make a one-off donation. Even a one-off donation of £1 helps, and I'll be really grateful for your support. So please go to Patreon or GoFundMe and search for Roots and All Podcast.